What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Phil Sarpong. Today I'm going to be talking about spiritual vision. Now, the reason that I'm talking about vision is that scientists believe that vision actually accounts for about 75% of your senses. These include hearing, taste, smell, and even touch. Now, one of the greatest inventions that was invented was the camera. And ironically enough, the camera was invented and inspired by the beautiful creation of the eye. Camera and an eye both has its lenses that helps it to focus on light. Cameras allow the light to be focused on a film, and therefore that picture is created. Your eye allows light to be focused on a layer of cells, and therefore a picture gets created. As light enters our eye, the front part is curved. So basically, your eye sees an image, flips it upside down. There's a bunch of neurological transmissions that go up to your brain that flip it back up. You know, a lot of people get caught up on how seeing is believing. And when it comes to the spiritual world, obviously we can't see certain things with our senses, right? It's hard to kind of touch the spiritual. It's hard to smell or taste or obviously see the spiritual. But for a lot of people, they know that it's there. And especially through tough times when we can't see something, when we can't physically touch something, it's hard to know if it's there or not, right? It's hard to know if God is truly there. Even for Christians, you know, God may not have gifted us with His presence, with His visual presence, but He did leave something behind, and that was His word. Like, why did God gift our generation with the word and not with His visual presence? Right? Especially if visual senses accounts for 75 to 80% of what you actually sense in your body. For a lot of people, being able to see Jesus would really make the difference. But you may know that anytime that one of your senses gets taken away, oftentimes another sense gets stronger. We see that with people that are blind or people that are deaf of hearing, is that many times their sensitivity in their touch or in their taste, or you know, if they're blind but they can still hear, if they can't hear but they can still see, it's almost like the neurological pathways in our brain and in our bodies, it heightens those senses and it brings those senses even more neurological signals. A lot of times it's easy to get discouraged when maybe we do want the physical presence of God. Maybe we actually want to see Him. Maybe we actually desire to touch Him. But we don't have to just dwell in that. That at the same time, that there are other senses in our bodies and in our minds that can heighten as a result of that. There's a scripture that says those who have faith can see God. You know, faith is one of those things. It's a spiritual, it's not a physically tangible thing. It's a spiritual thing where, you know, if you believe in something and you have the conviction that it exists, and you follow through with it in your actions and in your life, and how this faith can actually help you to see God, can actually be kind of confusing at first, because it's like, just because I have faith in God and I believe in God, how do I see Him? How do I actually see His presence? But I always think back to the analogy that the sun, for example, the sun, right? You don't have to stare directly at the sun to know that it's there, right? You can just go outside and you can look outside and you can kind of feel the rays of the sunshine. If you do stare at the sun, you'll get blind, so you don't want to actually stare directly into the sun. But you can feel the warmth of the sun. You can feel the rays. Again, that's not a physically tangible thing, but just the light of the sun can be something that's comforting in your day. And oftentimes, I feel like the sun is God's reminder of His eternal presence. Again, it's not something that's physically tangible. You can't physically directly look into the sun, but you know that it's there, you know that it exists, and you know that it's very powerful, right? The fact that its light can travel that big of a distance just to reach the earth. And it's kind of like God's presence, is that even though we can't physically see Him or touch Him, when we get into His presence, we know that He's there. We know that His light shines so brightly that it can shine within our hearts and within our minds. So anytime that I struggle with wanting to physically touch God, or I struggle with, not being able to physically see him, I always think back to his creation. Just the fact that when I go outside and I watch the sunset, that can make me think of him, and that can make me think of his presence a little bit more closely than not being around his creation, right? When I'm around other people that believe in spirituality, right, I can get a little bit closer to his presence. If I'm reading the word, his word, right, like I said, it's interesting that he gave us his word and not his physical presence. But when I get into his word, I can almost hear his thoughts on paper, and that can be a little bit way more of a physical, tangible thing that I can touch, that I can see, that I can read, right? I can read his thoughts on paper. And so I just want to encourage anyone that just struggling with feeling like God is really there, feeling like if God really cares, or if he's really hearing you, or if his presence is really there, to just remember the things that he's created. He's put things in your life around you for a reason, and it may be a way that he can communicate his presence to you. And so if that speaks to your heart, I hope you can really give this video a likes up, definitely subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more encouragement every single week. All right, guys, take care.